Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Thank you for braving the weather and joining us today to speak for our people, for whom every single minute, every single hour is a moment of tragedy. We are here to speak for people who survived the worst form of brutality and repression. We are here to speak for people who have survived genocide. We are here to speak for people who are surviving ethnic profiling and ethnic cleansing. And we are here in solidarity. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of everyone from the Ethiopian community, from different Ethiopian communities, and people from all sorts of Ethiopian origin are here. I realize that there are Tigrayans, there are Oromos, but there are many more. There are people from Kamant, from Agao, from Somali, from Gambela. So I acknowledge the presence of every single one of you to come in solidarity, to come out in solidarity and to join us as we speak for our people today. We are speaking for a people who are victimized by genocide. We are speaking for people who are braving a war and surviving it. We are speaking for people who are surviving drone attacks daily. We are speaking for children and women who are subjects of weaponized rape. We are speaking for people whose nation is completely decimated. We are speaking for people whose infrastructure is absolutely dismantled. We are speaking for people whose health is precarious today because health institutions are completely destroyed. And so I'm so glad and so proud to have you all here today to stand in solidarity with one another. I see that this moment is a moment of holding hands as people who are surviving genocide and war. I am so proud of each and every single one of you who took leave of absence from work, leave of absence from school, leave of absence from home and child caring, and who are here to make a voice, believing that we will make a difference. Thank you for your noise. Thank you for joining us. Our job is not complete yet. Our job starts now. There is no better time for standing in solidarity than this. It's a wonderful thing to hold hands. Once more, please put your hands together to recognize yourself. We don't often recognize ourselves. Thank you so much. I will now read the joint statement prepared by the organizing committee, the joint organizing committee of the Oromo Federation, the Federation of Oromo Australian Associations, and the Alliance of the Tsegaye communities here in Australia. The members of the Federation of the Oromo Civic Association of Australia, the Alliance of the Tsegaye communities in Australia, the Gambela People's Community Associations Australia, and many other Australians of Ethiopian origin have come together to hold this joint grand rally here in Melbourne. Our members from all walks of life came out in droves, as you can see. Came out in droves in order to try and draw global attention to the suffering of our compatriots currently victimized by the genocidal wars waged by Abiy Ahmed's regime in Ethiopia. In this rally, we sought to raise our voices in order to draw the attention of Australians and the wider world to the ongoing genocidal war conducted against the peoples of Tigray, Oromia, Kamant, Agao, Berta, Gumuz, Wolaita, Sidama, Gambela, Hadia, Konso, Ambaro, and others in Ethiopia. Abiy's regime is waging a war on all the peoples of Ethiopia in an attempt to implement a failed project of saving Ethiopia from its nations. Today, as we have been doing in the past 1 year, we reaffirm our denunciation of one, the genocidal war prosecuted on Tigray, Oromia, Kamant, Agao, Berta, and Gumuz by Ethiopia, by Eritrea, and the supportive Amhara expansionist forces. We also denounce the egregious human rights violations, including the weaponization of women and the weaponization of rape and sexual violence targeting women and children. We denounce the drone attacks and indiscriminate air bombing of civilians in Oromia, in Wallo, Walaga, and Karayu, and in Tigray. We denounce the siege of Tigray and consequent blockade denying access to humanitarian aid. We denounce the mass detention of Tigrayans and Oromos in Addis Ababa and in all the other towns in the country. We denounce the acts of ethnic profiling, purging from workplaces, and intimidation of Oromos and Tagarus into submission otherwise. We denounce the wanton destruction of properties, of economic infrastructure, and a means of subsistence to generate a process of death by famine. We denounce the looting, pillaging, vandalizing of properties that could not otherwise be appropriated. We also denounce the hate speech propagated by the regime to target Tagarus and Oromos for attack, for arbitrary detention or execution, or elimination otherwise. We denounce the treasonous act of conscripting foreign forces and enlisting UAE, Turkish, Chinese, and Iranian drones to kill our peoples. We denounce the forced conscription of young children into the military to fight this genocidal war against their will. We also would like to intimate to the world the gruesome situation of our peoples who are victimized by the long-drawn campaigns of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, mass atrocity crimes, state-induced famine, and displacement, flight, and refugeeism. We would like to appeal to the conscience of the international community so that they can stand in solidarity with our peoples to publicly denounce the regime's act of genocide. We have to call it by its name, and what is happening is a genocide. The war we are facing is a war of elimination. Its logic is the elimination of the other peoples of Ethiopia in order to sustain the project of building one nation out of many, or one nation on the grave. The country we gratefully acknowledge as our second home, as the home of our children, to do its part to help bring peace and relief to our peoples. We want Australia to play its important role as a responsible international citizen of the international community. In particular, here are our demands. We demand Australia to publicly condemn the genocide, designating it as such. Again and again we stress to call the acts of this regime by its true name. What it does is eliminating a people. And so we want Australia to call it by its name, to publicly denounce it, to publicly designate it as genocide. We also would like Australia to denounce the brutal wars of Abiy Ahmed and the mass atrocity crimes committed thereof. We want Australia to put a diplomatic pressure on the regime using bilateral and multilateral sites of engagement to stop the war and start seeking a negotiated settlement. We want Australia to allow unfettered access to humanitarian aid to all the people suffering from human-made and drought-induced famine. We want Australia to ensure the safety of Oromo political prisoners, such as Jawar Mohammed. I will be remiss not to mention my colleagues, my friends, my compatriots in name to demand their freedom. Jawar Mohammed, Bakala Garba, Gamachu Ayana, Abdi Ragasa, Michael Borana, Hamza Borana, all these people and the entire Oromo political leadership that is in prison. I want to demand the world to pay attention to their safety and security. I want Australia to put pressure to release all these political prisoners, including those who are under house arrest, the ones like Daud Ibsa. We want Australia to stop to help us stop ethnic profiling, arbitrary mass arrest, detention of Tigrayans and Oromos in concentration camps, in places that are known and places that are unknown, in police stations, in Kabale and Kifla Katama administrations, and in places that we don't even know. We want Australia to help us conduct an impartial international investigation of the mass murders and the mass atrocity crimes committed in numerous cities in Tigray and various other places such as the Guji zone, the Borana zone, the four Wallagga zones, Wollo, Matakkal, and everywhere else, so that the perpetrators of atrocious crimes such as genocide, ethnic cleansing, war crimes, and crimes against humanity are held accountable. We want Australia to join other international initiatives, such as those taken by the United Nations, the United States, and the European Union, to find a solution to the multifaceted problems in Ethiopia, to stop hostilities and end the war. We want to emphasize that war is not the solution, that genocide is not the solution, that we are people longing for peace, for even a lasting peace. And so we want Australia to do its part, to stop all hostilities and to end the war, to offer humanitarian assistance as needed. As we speak, we have one of the greatest risks of humanitarian crisis since the world has seen since the Second World War. Over 8 million people are in need of assistance. Over 1 million people are starving and dying by the hour. And so we want Australia to act in terms of providing humanitarian assistance, redoubling its efforts in that regard. We want Australia to assist in making perpetrators accountable for atrocities, helping set up a special prosecution for designing, managing, and executing a transitional justice program, to also help in the reconstruction of the economy and transformation of relationships among survivors. And our peoples are the first of the survivors. And the fact that you are here to speak out for those people shows that they are not only survivors, they are not only fighters, they are also resilient in a way that we cannot express in words. We want Australia to pay attention to the specific needs of these communities here in Australia. These people are children of survivors, yes, agents who act as voices for their peoples, yes, but these are also people who have their own trauma and their own suffering here in Australia. And we want Australia to alert and direct government departments to these specific impacts of war, trauma, and mental health challenges in order to make service available for members of our communities. And we also want Australia to consider strengthening the support system for the businesses, finances, families, and mental health needs of the people here. As Australians, we take the brunt of the tragedy that happens in our country, and we carry on our shoulders a lot of traumas, and we carry scars on our souls. Scars of the souls are more difficult, more painful than the scars of the body. We carry the scars of our souls, scars on our souls, because we are people who live with a trauma, and we want Australia to strengthen the support system for these people. Finally, I'd like to say that we submit these demands in the belief that our common humanity will move Australians and the wider world to act in our favor. We hope that Australia and the wider international community will move away from its callousness and indifference in the face of genocide. We hope that you will all stand with us, and in so doing, you will stand on the right side of history. And as we do, once again, we hold hands here. We hold hands, we stand in solidarity to defy the odds as our people have done, to survive the adversities as our people have done, and to say we are here for them, Jirra for them. Jirra. Can you join me to say Jirra? Jirra. 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 Jirra Tigray. Jirra Tigray. Jirra Oromia. Jirra Oromia. Jirra Matakkal. Jirra Matakkal. Jirra Gambella. Jirra Gambella. Jirra Kambata. Jirra Kambata. Jirra Hadia. Jirra Hadia. Hundi kaysanu isinif Jirra. Isin wajjin Jirra. Isinif dabanna. Isinif dubbanna. Is as Jirra. Jabata. Jabata Oromo. Jabata Ummat Tigray. Ajakum. Ajakum Tigray. Ajakum Tigray. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming today.
Stop the genocide! 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 Stop the war! 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 Stop the genocide! Stop the genocide! Stop the genocide! Stop the genocide! Down, down, Abiy! 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 Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Isaias! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Oromia! 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 Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Louder down there, I can't hear you. Guys, free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Free Oromia! Free Oromia! Free Oromia! Stop the genocide! Stop the genocide! Stop the war! Stop the war! Stop the war! Stop the war! Australia act now! 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 Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Isaias! Free Oromo! Free Oromia! 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 Free Tsegaye! 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 Free Oromia! Free Oromia! Free Oromia! Free Tsegaye! Free Tsegaye! Thank you, everyone. Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Isaias! Down, down, Isaias! Now a speech given by Gabby.
Guys, if you have flags, please raise your flags. If you have banners, please raise your banners. We need to be able to see them. Flags and banners up.
Flags and banners up. Flags and banners up.
Step down because the person that's doing the speech. Oh, why are we so close? Down one. What do I do, guys? John, down one, please. We need people down and away. Down one.
Okay.
One more. One more. Second step.
Second step? We're the front line. Give it to. Keep going.
Behind the banner.
Okay.
Behind the banner. Guys, what do I do? Please, one step back. Everyone, one step down. One step down.
Down, please, guys, from the stairs.
You need to just step down. You can record at the front. Just step down for me. Just one step.
Guys, can we please have your attention? We come together to advocate for the oppressed communities in Ethiopia and appeal to the Australian government to intervene swiftly. With evidence of escalating tensions in the Gambela region, civilian killings in Oromo, and weaponized starvation in Tsegaye, orchestrated by the current administration, the Ethiopian government has consistently demonstrated ineffective leadership. A year into the war, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has reported 6.8 million people in Tsegaye need emergency food, and 4.5 million are at risk of starvation. The man-made humanitarian crisis has internally displaced over 2 million Tigrayans and seen over 70,000 Tigrayans seek refuge in neighbouring Sudan. The unelected Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has also orchestrated the destruction of civilian infrastructure by aerial bombardment in Tsegaye. Ethnic Oromos and Tigrayans are being racially profiled and arrested without cause in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, as the Prime Minister pushes the anti-Tigrayan and anti-Oromo rhetoric in the media. Among those detained wrongfully is a Tigrayan Australian man from Queensland. The prematurely awarded Nobel Peace Prize
propaganda has emboldened the masses and seen an increase in ethnic tensions across the country, with many international leaders publicly condemning the ongoing genocidal war in Ethiopia. The Gambela, Oromo and Tigrayan communities in Australia question the lack of concern and action by the Australian government. We are urging the Australian government to pressure the Ethiopian government to demand independent UN-led investigations into the war crimes perpetrated, unimpeded access to humanitarian aid, the prompt removal of foreign troops and federal militias, calls for the cessation of all hostilities, and the Australian government to condemn the ongoing atrocities transpiring within Tsegaye publicly. The Morrison government owes a duty of care to repatriate the Australian citizens stuck in Ethiopia, as conditions progressively worsened since the declaration of war in November, and yet have failed to do so.
Thank you.
Down, down, Abiy! Down, down, Abiy! Down,